Good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. It's January 15th, 2025. Karen, could you call the attendance, please?
Sure. We have Tom Caldwell, Lori Connolly, Elizabeth Dillon, Jay Funling, Macy Lee on Zoom, Brian McGuire, and Aman Nagasi and Judy Steele are on Zoom. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for those watching at home. As you could see, or if you haven't from our posted agenda, we have a presentation from the head of our DPW tonight. We're concerning lead pipe inventories, plans, and replacements. As we know here on the committee, there are two articles we're going to be looking at for our town meeting next month concerning the work that DPW is doing regarding our lead pipe replacements. So we have our town, we have a representative from the town, Ms. Marina Fernandez here. Ms. Fernandez, if you want to come up. And for those of you at home, there was some information forwarded to you concerning final lead and copper rule improvements here in the town. So that document is on your email for your review. I've also handed out some hard copies for members of the committee who are present to be the basis of Ms. Fernandez's presentation for us tonight. And just to preview a little bit, I know that there's going to be maybe a little change in the ask from DPW concerning these articles that we're looking at. So, Ms. Fernandez, the floor is yours. If you could just introduce yourself and get going.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. My name is Marina Fernandez. I'm the newly appointed Director of Public Works here for the town of Milton. Thank you so much for having me. This is a very passionate issue, a very passionate topic, and I'll be happy to answer all of your questions, hopefully. Just want to start by letting you know that the changes that I'm requesting today, initially there were two asks. One for $1.7 million for an MWRA program for the lead replacement and test pits construction project here in the town. That was a 25% grant and 75% loan from the MWRA. That's still moving forward. What I'm asking to be removed was the 100% grant portion of the DEP program. That program is unfortunately no longer available. So initially I was in front of this board 2 years ago. We requested, I believe at the time, $300,000, which is what the results of all of this study and the work that we've done over the 2 years. So it's pretty exciting to be back here and show you the results and how it's leading up to new work. But unfortunately, that program is no longer available. We try to extend it. It's just not there. So that will be removed. We will review that with you in the future if we still have to do some work to see if it's still cost effective to do the program that I'll be discussing here today. So would you like me to go over the paperwork? Just a summary of how would you like me to proceed?
Yeah, so I appreciate that, Ms. Fernandez. So just so everyone knows, in the two articles, Ms. Fernandez is referring to the second one concerning the lead pipe. This was a program through the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And obviously those monies no longer being available. This won't be an article that we're going to ask town meeting to consider. So the focus will be on the single article, which would be, and if I may, Ms. Fernandez, to see what sum of money the town will vote to appropriate to provide capital needs for the town's water system, including costs incidental and related thereto, and to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to apply for and use federal, state, MWRA, and other funds for this purpose, to see how much appropriation shall be raised, whether by borrowing under applicable provisions of the law or otherwise, and act to anything on related thereto. And this was submitted by the select board, and that sum is $1.7 million is the request. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I want to congratulate you on your new position within the town.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. thank you for all the work you and your team do for us. And again, if you just want to just begin just by presenting some of the materials you have, that'd be great.
Sure. So this is all very fresh. On October 8th of last year, the US EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, announced final new regulations in regards to the lead and copper rule. That rule is pretty much in part was put together to because lead is a physical and behavioral effects of lead could occur in both children and adults. There is currently no dose of lead that would have little effect on adults, but it could affect children. So the town of Milton has been working diligently to proactively address the concerns and the requirements of the new rule. As of very recent as well, on October 16th, the 2024, right after the final rule was made available, the town submitted to the DEP our count, our logging of all of the materials within the town. And that I want to emphasize that is a moving target. We're always coming up with new information, ledgers, really old ledgers that prove the material of either portion of a water service. So everyone has a water services in their house. That water service has two portions. It has the private portion, which is from the main that's on the street usually, to the curb shutoff. A curb shutoff is either located in the back of a sidewalk, if you have a sidewalk in front of your street, of your house, or around, it's pretty much around your property line. And then from the property line to the house, that's the private portion. We were tasked by the EPA to understand the materials of both sides, and that was an immense amount of work leading. We could only use evidence and not guesses. You can't just guess, oh, this side is copper, it looks pretty young, pretty new, and we've seen. So we were very, we had to be 100% sure only certain type of information is accepted by the EPA. It can't be just a piece of information floating around. It has to be in one of our records within the town. So everything is really dictated by how the EPA will accept in order not to be any confusions. Once that work was done around October 16th, everyone here in town received a letter on November 16th of last year that let them know whether or not they were in the categories of either having a galvanized, non-galvanized, and if you look at the table below, which has recently, as recent of December 16th, so this table is not even the same table as the November 16 letter that went out to residents, because that got updated from that point on. But the ones that are highlighted in black are the ones that pretty much received the letter. Folks with galvanized, lead, or unknown services. Our main goal here is to continue to rule out the unknowns. Right now, we have approximately 4,000 properties that have either one side or another side. And when I say 4,000, it's not the 3,163 that you see on the table plus the 1,581. Because that portion could overlap. You could have a house that both has unknown or just one piece of unknown on one of the services. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then to answer another question, folks would have received both if they were residents as well as if if they're owner occupied, as well as the tenant will have received those letters. So just want to emphasize that as well. So now with that piece being done, the next step that we're seeing and what the EPA has told us through this new rule is that by October 2027, it would require that all municipalities within pretty much all over the United States, and the clock will start ticking. Everyone will have 10 years to remove all known leads and to understand all the materials within the entire community. So what we're trying to do here is put out this construction project, which is the $1.7 million ask, which will include the replacement of 78 either lead or galvanized services within the town, inclusive of both the private and the public portion of the service, as well as complete 500 exploratory pits. That will be done in a location that could, so you do the exploratory pit at the property line, so you can look at both sides. So that rules out the unknown portion of both sides. And it would be done in conjunction with, so the way it would be done so that if eventually we were to do a model, a statistical model of the town, we would build in this known 500 in order to use the statistical model to further reduce the number of unknowns. Why do we want to do that now? We are going to be along with all other communities within Massachusetts, within New England, within the United States. So the cost to take out lead is just going to start going up because of the, not only the harm that it could be done to our residents, but financially it's going to start costing, and we're going to end up owning it anyhow. So the idea is to get a head start, get the learning curve, and get those that we know today out of the ground. So with that being said, I will open up if you would like to ask any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer. I'm sure that there are many.
Sure. Well, thank you, Ms. Fernandez. I appreciate that information. I appreciate the information you provided on paper for us. I'm going to open this up to members of the Warrant Committee. Brian?
First, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah. Who's doing the work, do you know?
This is a biddable project, like every other construction project here in town,
Okay.
through Chapter 90 laws.
Yeah.
The Mass General laws, it has to be bid, so we don't know who the contractor will be. We will be retaining CDM Smith, who has done this legwork through the grant to put together the plans and specifications required to put the project out to bid. And probably bidding will be done in-house through the engineering department, although we do not have an engineer right now, a town engineer.
And 1.7 is an estimate. It could go a little higher, it could go a little lower, correct?
Correct. But we would contain ourselves within the 1.7 by doing several different techniques in the bidding, where we do add alternates. So if we have a very cost-effective, a contractor is putting a really good price out, we can add more, but we wouldn't potentially have to rebid the entire project because we've exceeded that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, one of my thoughts is, like, right now on my street and some other streets, they're going through the gas lines. They're digging up the street for the gas lines. And there's probably a lot of other projects like that. Is there a way to coordinate it when you go into a street, just to try to do it all at the same time?
We've been coordinating the unknowns. So our goal is to get as many unknowns into the known category. That, I think, is the name of the game. I believe that at the end of the day, we're going to be, once everything is done, and if I ever have to do a write-up, you will see that we've spent more money categorizing all of the services, all the thousands of services in town, than actually finding lead and replacing those leads. So thus far, because we're not we are coordinating all of our work within town with lead with this program. So for example, water main projects. We've done about 8 streets within the town in the last 3 years. All of those water services, if we were doing water service, we do the public side along with the main. If a private side was lead, we would replace that along with our work. And that was the protocol, because EPA and the engineering community now understands that once you disturb the lead on the public side, you will disturb it on the private side, and then you will start poisoning those residents that could potentially not have been poisoned before. So we replaced the entire service. So conjunction with that has been happening. In terms of the National Grid work, we have been, if they encounter lead, if they encounter water service, any water service is exposed, our technicians come out. And if it's lead, then it is made into our list. Drainage work, any work that we encounter service, and if we see it's lead, it's being noted in our program. I don't know if you recall, but we have an ongoing water metering program where we're replacing the water meters since 2014 around the entire town. That's one of the reasons why we know the service material for much more private than we know the public, because our technicians have been noting the materials coming out of the house along with the metering program, which is still, there's many, I'm not sure the percentage of the town that doesn't have their water meters changed, but every opportunity of seeing, observing, or being able to change a service, it's being done, along with all these other types of projects, not only gas.
Okay, great, thank you. That's great.
Jay?
Thank you. So you said we have 4,000 that are unknown approximately.
Correct.
And you also said the EPA requires, I forget how you phrased it, hard evidence, not just educated guesses. And then, so we're digging 500 holes and putting those into a statistical model. I guess that's what I'm wrestling with. You dig 500 holes out of 4,000. Okay, that's 1 out of 8. That's pretty good. Then you put in a statistical model. Does that model just tell you other houses are likely or unlikely to have lead, and does that meet the threshold?
So the statistical model, it's a very robust, and it's one of the only statistical model accepted by the EPA.
Okay.
Right now, the statistical model, you don't look at it as 500 eliminating 4,000. That's not the goal. You look at it, the 500 will build up the model in order to maybe reduce the 4,000 by another 40%.
Okay.
Okay? And that's why we removed that second line from the request, because it made sense when it was a 100% grant. But now, if we have to fund all of the required, the model, to build that model alone is $100,000 in addition to some additional test fitting. At one point, that balance is going to tip, and I might as well just continue my old school fashion, test fit all of the unknowns and get it done. Does that make sense?
You lost me at the end there. I'm sorry.
So instead of, and again, don't quote me on the cost, but if the test fitting, I'm sorry, if the statistical model alone is $100,000, and if it costs me, again, I don't have those numbers. If for simplicity, if it costs me $1,000 to do test bits, at one point it would make more sense to just do the test bits and not go into the model.
To do
that-
4,000 test pits, for
Yeah.
example. Okay.
The good news also is I just spoke with the engineers, and we found some older ledger, and there were 15 older ledgers inside a vault that were found after this date. And my engineers right now are telling me that they are reducing the number of unknowns by another 1,000 to 2,000 just through those multiple, very old ledgers that have been found, very detailed, and it's great news. So that is why I believe that perhaps I will not be returning here asking for the statistical model. I think,
Oh.
I think that with this new information.
So if you knock it down by 2,000, you might want to dig 2,000 test pits.
And then just call it a day. Yeah.
Okay. That's too bad, because I had a lot of questions about statistical model.
Oh, okay.
But that'll have to wait for another day.
There's a whole website. I will be more than happy to send that. I know a lot of other communities are going that route, if they don't know. Because a lot of, and the other thing that I didn't mention is there's going to be a point that the EPA is going to, I believe that after October 2027, the number of replacements that a community will be requested to replace, it will not only be based on the knowns, leads, but it will also be based on unknowns. And we, as Milton, because we don't have as many leads as we do unknowns, it will become more difficult to dig up faster in order to find the leads, in order to meet our quotas.
I'm sorry, I did not follow that, but I
Did anyone?
But I trust you.
Yes, I did. I followed you.
So, just let me.
Don't make me
I didn't mean.
explain.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So, Liz, what does it mean to you?
You
Well,
put-
no, but I understand, and I look to Jay sometimes when numbers and Lori. But if
Yeah, I'll
Maybe
explain
just
it again.
explain to me
Let me
again.
rephrase it. So having 4,000 unknowns is very bad
Right.
because starting in October 2027, if I tell the EPA that I have 4,000 unknowns and 40 leads, they're not going to go back to me and say, all right, Milton, replace lead in 10 years
Right.
at four houses a year, which would take out my 42. They also account for the unknowns. And then on the unknowns, they're going to say a percentage of unknowns are lead,
Right.
which you will greatly, I believe, and that's what MWRA is telling me, it would be much more, it could be now replace 40 leads. Well, in year one, I'm going to have to replace all of mine, and then in year two, I'm going to be scrambling, finding another 40. I might not even have 40. They're inside the unknown bucket. Okay.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other member have any questions? I'm going to dive in. I just wanted to see maybe just about the MWRA itself. And I think it's very appropriate to talk about it tonight because water bills went out. so I just thought it was funny. So I just wanted to talk about or ask you about the zero loan program that the MWRA is offering. And we apply to that, right?
Yeah, well, are you talking about the water or the sewer?
For the removal and replacement of the portion of the lead. So was there an MWRA?
So this program is the 25% grant.
Yep.
So 25% of the 1.7 will never have to pay it back.
Okay.
The 75% is at 0% interest.
Okay.
MWRA gives us a lot of different programs like this. A lot of zero interest. We use it all the time on the water side. And the Warrant Committee votes on it every year. As well as on the sewer side. And that's the mechanism in which we replace water mains here in town, as well as we maintain and replace our sewers and do all the work we've been able to do.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Well, yeah. I just didn't know if there was like if the MWRA opens this up to all communities, or if we have to apply, or
We have to apply, and it's disbursed quarterly.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we will miss this January quarterly because the appropriation has to be in place in order to be voted and an agreement be in place with us. We'll take advantage of it in April. So if this moves forward, the schedule right now would look like In April, I would have appropriation, so we could go out to bid in April for this work to happen this summer.
Okay, let me ask about the work itself. If you know, maybe based upon other communities, is this work that, like, would it commence that quickly? Most likely, okay.
Yes. The initial legwork, which will probably be done by the DPW engineering department, is to get access agreements with the homeowners.
Oh, yeah.
Water service we change it in the public side all the time. The private side, so for right now, the 42 that are known, they all know that they have lead. They've all been notified, and we also have a requirement to do sampling at those locations. So they receive sample results back as well. Most folks love the idea of getting it replaced. But believe it or not, some folks will not sign the agreement for us to replace that lead. And there's nothing we can do about those, right?
Okay, how would the EPA look at something like that? Like, if you have a homeowner who's like, I don't want you in here, don't bother. Like, what bucket does that
I
go in?
believe that after October 2027, there will be a whole set of documentation that we will have to prove to the EPA that we've done our due diligence, that we've done everything we can,
But for the homeowner
right?
making the agreement.
And then at that point, there might be a requirement, once it changes ownership, that the sale might not move forward. And I'm making speculations, but I'm sure we'll see something that will need to be done, and either on the ordinances as a town ordinance requirement or in the EPA level. But we'll be seeing something like that, I'm sure.
Okay. And this is more maybe for the public. I think we have a good idea, but this process where you would approach a home that you've identified as lead, as you just indicated, how does the process, like, what does the town do? And how do they approach the homeowner, and what's the conversation like? Like, how does that...
We are replacing the service, or you generally with results?
But I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, if you've identified a home that has lead in it, as you were just in your illustration, what does that look like? What should a homeowner expect? How does the town approach them? And, what's the agreement look like? It's more of just an idea. If your house does have lead, what is the town asking?
So they will have known. If they have lead, they are known. And again, this is the reason why the current inventory date is of December 16th, because again, this is a moving target. Of the people that have just been notified, most folks just want to get it out of their systems right away, regardless of cost, and they're paying for their own private service to be replaced. Some are unable to do so, and they've been living with that service lead. So they get into a yearly lead sampling program through our water department, and those locations will notify them if their lead has exceeded. Because again, lead could, technically, not that anyone here is ready to gamble on it, but lead could live in a service material and not leak into the water for the longest period of time, until it leaks, right? So that's the name of the game here that nobody wants to play. But folks will have lead, and they will enter this yearly program of sampling, and the town of Milton has not had any exceedances, which is great news. But with that being said, once we commit to replacing, they will receive a new form of notification saying that the town is ready to replace their service, likely sometime. We'll let them know. I don't know if any of you have had water services, water mains being replaced in this past. But basically, you get a letter. It says who the contractor is, It will give you a timeline. It will likely have an agreement for them to review. They will probably contact me or the town engineer at that time. They will have questions. Someone might call us, oh, I have this really fancy mailbox. Do you need the mailbox in? And then we'll go through the details. I might have a site visit where I'll bring a technician and a contractor, and then we'll answer questions that they may have. But it's a very seamless process. We can do a pool of the service without breaking. So it's not actually a major dug up of anyone's services. Through this process, we cannot afford, and it's not meant to replace any, artistic, bird bath that costs $1 million, right? There will probably be a cap related. That's the only way that we can afford. We will get a cost for the replacement, a general replacement from our contractor, and it will cap at that. So if anyone will have anything like a super expensive mosaic, totally making it up, I haven't seen a mosaic, but then it will be up to that homeowner to replace the mosaic so we can do the work and bring it up. Now, general lawn, we're pretty good at seeding and returning it back to its original condition, as long as the homeowner is watering it. So there are lots of details. We've done this, many times. So we should be in pretty good shape working with most questions that folks will have.
Liz,
I have a lot of questions.
please.
I waited and I wrote them all down.
Please.
So you already answered 2 of them. So thank you. If Milton were to not fully comply, what kind of penalty does now I know if a homeowner refuses, that's different. That's not our failing to comply. But if Milton just doesn't comply, what happens? I tried to read the rule, but
Yeah.
I didn't get. It's very many thousands of pages long, so I didn't get that detailed into that part of it. But.
So we will be now requiring, even after the October 2027, all the known leads, we will be required to provide filters. It will be part of the water department service. So you're going to start picturing us with certified lead reducing filters in our yard, providing those to the homeowners, not only when they have lead, but for 6 months after we replace that lead service. Our lead action levels, exceedances will be reduced after October 7, 2027 from 15 parts per billion. I'm sorry, I don't have the unit. It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I should know, so I apologize. From 15 to 10, and there is very rigorous testing. Once you start exceeding those, everybody gets notified, the media gets notified, all residents get notified, and it's extreme amount of work. I'm not there yet as to see how that would look, but currently it's similar to what, the boil water.
Sure.
It's something similar to that.
Yeah, I saw that notification. So I'm just curious if then, I'm an attorney, so I think about these things. If then the people of Milton, there's some liability for Milton, for the townspeople, if Milton were not to comply. I'm just curious about that. That's, but.
I think it would be more related to the work that the water department will have to do.
Yeah, and then the cost of sending out all those notices.
Not
and
only
then,
the notices, but we might enter a boil water.
Okay.
Once
Advisory.
you start advisory,
Okay.
because once you start exceeding those, right.
And then can you talk about what the town is doing about public buildings? Or is there any like this is homeowners, but what about the public-owned buildings, like the town-owned buildings? Are we aware of if they have any lead pipes? Has that been fixed?
No, none of the 42 lead and/or galvanized are in public buildings. But that is much easier where we can just go in.
Go in and see.
it.
Okay. And then we were talking about tenants. So you said that the tenants get notification as well as the homeowners.
Correct.
So if a homeowner doesn't want you digging around in their yard because they don't live there, but the tenant, it's up to the homeowner. So then the tenant wouldn't have the protections of
They have the knowledge.
you coming in. Okay.
They have the knowledge that they live in a house with lead, which
Okay.
is much more than they had before.
Okay.
EPA is trying to be a bit more equitable.
A little
as to-
bit.
Yeah,
More open. Okay.
because we do understand that folks that rent sometimes are not made aware of flooding. You know, we
Right.
talk a lot of nowadays environmental justice, as you know.
And then, so I think you already said this, but I just want to make sure. So with respect to who's paying for this all, so individual homeowners, if they want to take care of it right away, like I had to replace the galvanized pipe, just exploded one day, and so I had to replace it in my house, not the town-owned portion. So if people want to replace theirs, they're more than welcome to at their own cost. If they want to not do that because, you know, they don't want to expend that cost, at some point the town may say to them, okay, we've determined that you have a lead pipe, and then the town will reimburse it up to a certain point.
No, so right now we're able to take care of the 42 that are lead right now.
Okay.
But 156 galvanized, as you see, this number is not going to take care of all of 156 galvanized. We are predicting to be able to just change the lead services, not the galvanized at this point.
Okay.
The galvanized will enter the 10-year replacement queue. So folks that have galvanized pipe and lead, if they don't choose to take care of it on their own, they're just going to have to wait. And I don't think that because of the way that the funding mechanism is within the town, we will never be able to tell someone, you are in the list for next year.
Someday, yeah.
You're in the list, you know, because who knows if we're going to have the funding next year. I don't know what if the EPA, the MWRA is going to come up with a program that gives us a 25% grant. By the way, the requirement to do the 25% grant is that we are taking care of the private right now. I don't know if the federal government will provide with any additional help. So it's, how long is anyone willing to wait again? Because unfortunately, we don't have the funds right now to just take care of everything, and as we find if we just are unable to.
I have like a couple more, but somebody else can be called on. Doesn't have to be.
No,
me.
please,
Okay.
continue on
I have
this road.
very few. Okay, so then after the lead ones that we know about are replaced, and then we're working to kind of try to replace some of the other ones as we can. What else does this rule require besides the replacement of these pipes? Because I was looking through it, and it seems to be a lot of things outside of what we're talking about. So are there like next steps?
Yeah, so I mentioned the no materials, turning everything into, you know, achieving 100%. So I think I bulleted that here on the rule summary, locating those pipes, achieving 100% of locations, achieving 100% of lead pipe replacements of both lead and galvanized, more rigorous testing, lowering the thresholds for communities to take action on their lead, and requiring those filters. Those are think are the highlights.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure
Okay.
what others off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there are like things changing in addition to that. But those are, when we have webinars, and these are the major
Those are the
highlights
main
that are
things.
coming out.
Okay. And then with the new incoming administration, with the new president, are we anticipating anything different? I mean, I know the EPA is a separate thing. That's a very long notice and rulemaking process. We don't know. Are we anticipating any changes? Could there be? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
This is a rule. I'm sorry, I'm not that great. I don't know if the rule could be revoked.
Yeah. It's a
by
whole
president.
process, I think.
I'm sorry, yeah, I don't.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I got.
Yeah.
They can just
Yeah.
rules no more. I don't know.
And then I have one more, just for the public. Can you talk about why lead is harmful, just like briefly in our water, so people can understand the importance of doing all this? That's it. Okay.
So lead is persistent and it can bioaccumulate on the body. So a small amount over several years can cause both physical and behavioral effects of lead, starting from the womb to adulthood. In children's, low levels of exposures have been linked to damage to the central and peripheral nervous systems, learning disabilities, shorter stature, impaired hearings, and impaired formation and functions of blood cells. In addition to, in the water, lead can come through the galvanized pipe. Basically, it was a lead pipe that had a galvanized lining, and that, as we've seen since it's really, really old, that galvanized comes off, and then you've got that exposure to lead. Another thing where you see lead is the pipes entering their homes. We have no bearing on pipes inside people's homes. So having that lead service line replaced, but not replacing your own plumbing is not going to do you, it will do good because again, it bioaccumulates, but you're still getting a level of lead. Faucets, the other thing that people forget to do is when they change, they should not forget to do, they change the lead pipe, like you have your galvanized, you should change that little screen on your faucet, because if you did have lead back there, that tiny amount could be coming. So I'm not sure if you were made aware to do that, but I would have changed my little, do you know what the little, kind of like a
Screen.
screen
Thing, yeah.
in every faucet, potentially the ones that you drink off the kitchen. So we do have a website. I put that in the documents here. If we can get a link to the folks here that are listening in, it's in the townofmilton.org. Go to Public Works Department of the Public Works. There would be on the top hand corner a Learn More, and there's a whole thing about lead. You can get links to the MWRA. MWRA has several links. We're still asking folks that are under, so there's 1,581 folks that are within the private. They can do their own testing where you can scan a QR code, send a picture to our department. We can help you figure out whether or not that private side is lead or not lead. If you're not comfortable, I know that some folks are not comfortable, going down to their basement and figuring that out. Okay, we'll send a technician for free. So do get in contact, get on our website and check it over and over and over again, because your material might be changing in terms of you might have been on the unknown bucket and now you're known. However, with that being said, if you become known lead, you will receive a notification. So no news from us is good news. But we do have to notify everyone every year. So if we still did not change you from an unknown, you're going to be notified again. think I got derailed from your question.
And if people do replace it, they should notify you.
We will know because engineering department, you cannot change, nobody
Yeah.
can touch a service without getting a permit.
Yes.
Through a drain layer, contract drain layer. That's also a reason why you want to, if you do have lead, try to get ahead of that. If not, again, if the reasons we've noted here in terms of exposure in health, some folks I have, believe it or not, some folks have said, oh, I don't have any children here, I'm fine. Well, you still would maybe want to do it. Your house prices go up if you're selling it. I believe that not sure if anyone is in the real estate, but if you have a new service, that's great stuff to have. And you can tell that you're unknown lead. And in addition to that, I do think that costs are going to become more and more expensive as we are now starting to compete with everyone else. But the website is great. You can look for your address. You can look for any family, friends, or loved ones that live in town, and if you're concerned about them, or if you need to help them.
Is that on the interactive map?
That is where, yes, if you can
Where I
find
can
your, I
find
can help
myself?
you, yeah.
It
not on
seems like, no, it's not up, but it's,
You can click on your house, and
oh, and then what will it
it'll
There's
tell
an
you on
address
the top left.
Yeah, on the right-hand corner, on the side. I can help you after this if you like.
Can you talk about the cost for the test pits, the 500 pits versus the 78 services that you're anticipating replacing?
Yes, I don't have that number in front of me right now, but the anticipation of the one lead service replacement is 4,500, and the number, and the test pits will vary, but we're looking from anywhere from 500 to 1,000
Per test.
per test pits. And those will also potentially be on private property because we would have to do it right at the line so we can look at both sides. And then you would see that I have added 78, not 42 plus 3 for service replacement. 42 plus 3 is 45. The 78 is because I added additional in case through the 500 I found more lead, and we were right there, so we just get it out.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have copper. Thank you, Interactive Map. Because
It's very easy, yeah.
Yes, I do have copper. That's true.
We would have known that you have copper because you did the work recently.
Yeah, exactly.
Fine, yeah.
Sorry. You found the ledgers, you said, with like 1 to 2,000 addresses? That'll say what they are?
I found ledger, so, okay, this is really interesting. Back in as early as 1999, I believe, plus or minus years, the town of Milton, and it's news to me, maybe some of the residents that have been here for longer will know this, all of the water services were replaced in-house. There was no contractor. There was no third-party contractor that ever came and dealt with this.
DPW did it?
DPW did everything. All of the service, all of the replacements. You had a pipe burst, you called DPW, DPW came in, and you got a bill. So those ledgers are actually bills that were sent out to residents, and we also, they just logged everything, and as a part of that, they had the material that they used.
Wow.
And even though we know for a fact that after 1965, they didn't use any, I'm sorry, that I think that the 1962, they didn't use it. We're using a 1965 line just to be 100% sure. But we know that as early as 1950s, they were mostly using copper, and that is where we're getting the 1,000 from.
How soon will that, you're updating that now in the system, right, the interactive map?
It gets updated weekly through the folks at CDM Smith. They have a team of folks that are going through that. They're doing a QA, QC, a quality, accuracy, and check Once everything is finalized, it gets updated. So even from this December 16, I think we've updated already once, the interactive app map.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea when it's gonna be completed?
The inventory?
Yeah, like going through all the ledges, the old ones.
Oh, yeah, within a month,
Okay, great. I have one more question.
of course.
So we missed out on a program with 100%, where we could have got 100% reimbursement, is that
The
right?
100% would have only, that program is the DEP program, which was part of achieving the inventory locating legacy pipes. And that did not fund replacements. So we never missed out on the replacement. Replacement was always something
It
we
was
had to do
just
through the
testing.
MWRA. But it did fund the work that CDM Smith has done over the last 2 years with us. And it does fund a predictive model, which, again, right now we just won't do at this point.
Were we like just behind on doing it, like?
We didn't think, we weren't expecting to need a predictive model. And the funding that we requested thus far was the funding that we felt like DP was going to give us the go-ahead. This was, for the lack of a better word, it was a Hail Mary. We thought that if they had any extra work from other communities that didn't take advantage of it, we were like, hey, here we are, we're ready to take it. And we were gonna get another 200. It's just not there anymore.
Okay.
We were hoping it was, everyone took advantage of the free money.
Right. It's really our money anyway, so.
One question that has not been asked, and something that the engineering department will have to deal with, is there are some services that are very, very long here in town. 500 feet. It's sometimes 10 times more than an average service. Those services, one service could cost service $25,000. Right now, they're not on this list. But if we are to uncover something like this, I think that we might have something in the contract agreement with that homeowner that we would only pay for up to what we're paying everyone else.
And would those be, are those private residences that are maybe an acre off of the public way? Okay.
So the question is, I want to bring that up as a
No, I
warrant
think it's-
committee.
Thank you.
But in order to take advantage and take care of the most amount of residents within this timeline, this really proactive approach is not perhaps spend 20 grand in one service, but take care of 4 services.
Yeah. Yes?
Maybe you already answered this, and I'm sorry. So I'm looking at some friends of mine's houses. I will not call them out. So some of them I can see that it's the public part is unknown, and then maybe the private is like copper or something. So for the parts that the town owns that are unknown, that's kind of what the test pits are for. So the town's gonna figure that out, and then hopefully if it finds lead, those are the ones, it'll replace those.
We will
As a
replace those.
okay.
The idea is let's replace lead when we're testing.
Okay, where we
They're
find-
remobilized, let's just get it out. At that point, the replacement of the lead, regardless of what side, we're stopping to see which one is private and which one is public. Lead, let's get it out of the ground.
And then if you have the test, so you said before that like, if people have unknown and you send out a technician, you might want to check again because maybe it wouldn't show up, but it might show up later. Am I right about that? Maybe?
No, the technician would be so if you're looking at the table, you have the public side and the private side. The private side, we still have sometimes, not a big majority of the time, the luxury of finding out what service material it is when we look at the pipe coming out of the house. So if we continue to send technicians out,
Right.
this 1,581 should be greatly reduced.
Okay.
It's just a question of entering the houses. Now, what is unable, if, let's pretend that the ledgers never existed, and this is my final number count, which, again, it won't be, it should be greatly reduced, but let's pretend that this is my fixed number now. The 3,163 from the public side, those, there's no way of poking into. They are from the curb, the shut off on the property line to the main. There is no little camera I can send out there. There's nothing I can do other than test bid it.
Okay. So for the public service lines, the test bit should be enough to determine yes or no, this is lead
For
or
both
not
the
lead.
public and the private,
Okay.
the test bits, and we'll try to do the test bits for the homes that have both sides
Yep.
unknown. So then you test bit it right at
Okay.
the connection, and then you can look both sides, and then you're good to go.
Perfect.
Okay.
So for public, we're talking about going from the water main to the sidewalk, essentially. What about all the water mains in town? Are we sure those are all good?
Those are all good. There are no lead.
Great, thank you.
So, Ms. Fernandez, one of just the takeaways, we have a very diverse housing stock in Milton, homes built in the 1600s, all the way up to, today, being built right now. That's not really a true predictor of the service.
It is. We have a signed affidavit from, we were able to interview a DPW worker that noted that there was no lead in the DPW yard being made available for replacement as of 1965. So if anyone's homes were built, if anyone's services were either replaced or built after 1965, we've knocked them down from the list. And that is an acceptable method by the EPA. An interview with an individual.
Is it fair, like the use of lead and galvanized steel? I mean, I don't know if you said this. Did that go out of practice in the 50s?
In the
The
60s.
60s? That's when.
Yeah. And in the 70s, there was a state rule that said no more lead, late 70s. So, for example, that was great because Indian Cliffs is built in the 70s, 75, I believe. Those are all good, no lead there.
Okay.
Same for, that was the major one, because once I had that cutout year, I was able to get a lot of the unknowns because we didn't have records of Indian Cliffs. Yeah.
Yeah, big relief.
We also went through like records, and if in the details, it had a detail that showed how the contractor was to put in a service, and he wrote copper. That, yeah, little things like that. It was just a lot of combing through.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is wrought iron cement lined bad?
No, that's iron. No, that's
You don't
good.
like looking at different houses?
Yes, I have been looking at
I had a question.
everybody I know.
That is good.
Ron has a question.
Yeah. Ron?
So just for my clarification, that includes the service that's outside as well as any development that would have happened inside the home. Is that correct?
The beginning cut out.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So that date threshold, whatever date that was in the 60s, that includes the service lines that are outside the property as well as the piping inside the property. Is that correct?
We cannot speak to the plumbing inside the house because, again, we can only speak to what was installed, and what I was mentioning is as early as the 1990s, any installation outside of your house, that was done by our own folks, our DPW department. And that is what we can testify and assert you of. We are unable to assert because the plumbing, because those were done by, everyone hired their own plumbing, and I cannot tell you if the person that built that house in the 70s for some reason got a hold of a very cheap stack of lead pipe and put lead pipe in their plumbing. It was beyond their control.
Understood.
Yeah, but and again, the Massachusetts, unless that would be I could, if you have a question about that, you could talk to someone from our building department and see if
Right.
there was any regulations through the state in regards to the inside plumbing. My understanding that regulations through the state for the service materials were made in the late, I can get you a better date, but it was somewhere in the late 70s, if not early 80s.
Okay. Understood. So this date is really only for the service line. Any plumbing inside, people would have to check when their plumbing was updated and confirm it themselves with the
Yeah,
testing.
and I'm not a plumber, but I would think that the plumbing is not as big of a deal because you can visually check some spots. This is a bigger deal because this is buried in your underground.
The yard.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Understood.
So
Thank you.
you could probably get a plumber out there, and they can do visual, and they can let you know if you have any solder. Did I pronounce that right? Solder.
Yeah.
Right. Lead's in the solder.
Anybody have any other questions for Ms. Fernandez concerning the lead pipe work that the town is looking to conduct further? Okay, Ms. Fernandez, is there anything else that you'd like to add for the committee?
No, thank you for all of your support. The only reason why I'm here today is because you supported our request a couple of years ago. It was a long time coming, and that's one of the reasons now why that inventory, it seems easy, right? But that took a couple of years and a lot of legwork, and and you guys were a part of this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Fernandez, seeing no questions, we appreciate your time and the work you're doing and the work you're going to do in the future for us in our town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, well, presentation's completed. We can engage in a discussion. Members present would like to discuss the appropriation. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Well, I'll make a comment.
Comments or...
My thought is, I mean, it's a health issue, especially for children. So I don't see, you know, I think they should force us to do it. So I think we should do it. I don't see how we get around it anyways. But serious health risks if you look online with lead, so.
Of course. I mean, we all know the stories of Flint, Michigan, right? I mean, we've heard stories, and to Brian's point, you know, this is a necessary thing. A lot of money, but money that should be spent, from my shoes. Jay?
Yeah, I'd say this was a good discussion. We got a lot, you know, I think we all learned a lot, and I think we asked a lot of questions that town meeting might want to ask, so we can preempt some of those. But at the end of the day, we're being asked, do we vote, you know, what do we vote on this article? And I think that was a no-brainer before she started speaking, and it's the same no-brainer after she stopped speaking, which is that I support it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's probably a money-saving over time situation. One, we're required to do it, so there's not a lot of wiggle room. Two, right, like we talked about, it is a health concern. But three, if people are having, if people are having the health effects that could happen from lead and it builds up over time, that could be a tax sort of on our, schools, our health system. So I think it's, our community. So I think it's probably a cost saving measure over time. And it seems like they've really limited, to me, the amount they're being conservative about the amount of money that they're going to spend. It's not like, hello, let's replace all of them right at once. Let's go test every single thing. It seems like a very targeted approach, which I appreciated her explaining, because before, I don't know that I really had a firm understanding about, we're going to do these test pits, but this is how we're going to get it down even more. So the fact that they were able to rule out a lot of them already, and she seems like Ms. Fernandez really seems like she's done a lot of due diligence in the DPW, and I thank them for that, in trying to knock it down even more so that we're not doing test pits for information that we could have found from a historical record or for someone who worked here or, something else that we have. So it seems like they've really researched, tried to limit it, and are now being very careful. And I appreciate that because, we have a lot of people asking for money and we need to make sure that we apportion it appropriately. But it seems to me that the DPW is very carefully making sure that their ask is limited to what it needs to be. So I appreciated that anyway.
I think it is a conservative approach, and frankly, when I first learned about this, I was shocked that the numbers were so low, frankly,
Great.
across the town, in terms of how we keep our infrastructure. So I was very happy. And then, of course, the way they really, like you said, conservatively, approach the project, and they've used the money in a really good way, intelligently.
And well, taking it very seriously, the health issues too. So I appreciate that as well.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody has any other comments. It's a very clear article, I think, for us.
Well, I just did the math. She said 78. The 42 plus the 3 is 45. Lead replacements plus anything that she finds when she does 500 test pits. So she increased it to 78, 4,500 per, and then 500 pits at 500 to 1,000. So I use 1,000. I'm 500,000. I'm getting a total of 851. So
Oh, okay.
why are we appropriating $1.7 million?
They've doubled the amount.
Yeah, so.
Times it by 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I don't know if it's, so that would just be a question.
What number are you saying? So it's the
Yeah, can you go
42.
through that slower?
So I did 78, she had said, at 4,500. And then 500.
$4,500 each?
Yes.
I'm not sure what you're
The
saying.
pipe, so to replace,
What is the 78? I'm very,
okay. The lead, line 42. We know we have to replace plus 3.
right, 45.
So, and if you recall, she said 45, although it's 45, I'm assuming. Maybe it is both sides, Tom. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. Because even though they do a test pit, it may only be on one side.
Right.
That's. And the 42 is only on the private side.
Right.
Not the other side. So it still seems then a little bit high.
Okay.
But,
So the 45, I was following you.
okay.
And
So
then what's?
45, then
Yep.
the cost per was 4,500. And she increased it in case when she drilled the 500 pits, she found some that had lead. So 45 to 78 is just another, whatever that means.
33.
33 additional she's anticipating she'll find and will repair.
Okay.
And then the 500 test pits at 1,000 apiece,
Okay.
got me to 851. So,
But is it both sides?
Oh, but
well, but she's saying that I thought I heard her say. Go
I
ahead.
guess I'd look at it a different way. If she's
tell me.
thinking 500 test pits
Yep.
might find us 33 lead ones.
Right.
Well, then 4,000 unknowns across town. If there are 33 for every 500, I multiply that by 8. I'll say there are 200, our best guess might be there are 264 plus 45 around town. And that gets me to 1.2 million. So, yeah, I was thinking the 33, if she's guessing 500 test pits will turn up 33 bad ones,
Right.
then I'd also guess 4,000 unknown ones will give me 264 bad ones.
But we're not attacking those yet.
Well, I don't know about yet. I mean,
Well, we have the 10 years.
If they uncover lead, then they will.
Yeah, right, that's true. But,
so to me, I just took that as that's her best guess of,
yeah, I was just.
yeah, no,
confirm
sure,
that.
we're, yeah, back of the envelope.
I mean, I would think if the detection is lower than her estimates, I'm sure they won't just waste the money, right? It won't get spent unless they detect lead in some of these lines.
Correct.
So if they have money left over, I would assume it rolls over next year and the town can decide what to do with it.
Yes, I would agree. Was just trying to reconcile in my mind how we got to the 1.7 and if there was any room to take it down a little because 1.7 is a big number and we have a lot of other very large numbers to come.
Yeah.
Was kind of where I was going.
And I'm guessing we'll borrow this as it goes. Like, if we're unsure how many we have to replace, we won't borrow enough to replace 264. We'll borrow enough to replace the ones we know about. And as we learn more, we'll borrow more, I'm assuming. I mean, it's a zero interest loan, so
Yeah.
Oh, you have Steve and Allison.
I don't know.
Steve,
Speaking of, where is this coming out of? What account? How is this being, where is this, is this out of reserve? Are we billing the town, like the taxpayers? Like, was that answered? I'm sorry if I missed that.
It's borrowing.
yeah, through the MWRA.
And then-
When we say borrowing, does that mean it's got to be paid back?
I'm afraid so.
Yeah, 75%
And
of
then,
it.
so
zero
like,
interest.
how is that paid back? Just like, we must be billing the taxpayer, like the homeowners.
Right.
Okay.
It'll
I
be
just
part
wanna
of the- it'll
take
be-
that into consideration.
I'm sorry, I think it'll be just part of the debt service.
Okay, to your point, Lori, I have no problem doing it. I just want to, I think when we come through with all these numbers, we need to have somebody put together like these kind of important factors of like, what's going to be on homeowners. Because most people would not know that is coming to them.
Correct.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I do know, if I can, Mr.
Oh,
Chair,
please, yeah.
I do know when Nick is projecting the budget for next year and the year after and the year after, I know for a fact he's told me he's looking at, for example, things that town meeting has said we can borrow that we haven't yet because we haven't done them. And so he's lumping that all in. He's saying, town meeting gave us permission a year or 2, 3 years ago to borrow this money. We haven't done it yet. Let's assume we're going to borrow this money tomorrow, and that's part of the debt service number that he's including in his budget for next year and the year after and the year after. So I guess one question is, is this borrowing? If we end up borrowing 2 million, let's say, after we get the, that's the 75% of the total, and then divide that by 10 with no interest, 120,000 per year. I'm guessing that's going to be in Nick's budget for next year and the year after? Or maybe his best guess of, okay, maybe we'll be borrowing this in 2 years and it'll appear in the budget at that point. You make a good point that, we can't lose sight of this.
We can have our town administrator come in next week if the members would like, and he can explain that for us.
And maybe if we could ask Ms. Fernandez to just explain the math on that as well, because she's done some kind of calculations and we're sort of guessing at what they are. And I appreciate you're doing the math, Lori. And to Allison's point, I mean, right, we have to kind of justify to town meeting where all the money is. So it's clear to me that she's done math.
Roughly, yeah.
Right, some kind of math. So if she can just kind of explain it out the way that she did, and you wrote down, Lori, but because it doesn't add up to the 1.7, could we get an explanation of where the 1.7 came from?
You have Steve.
Steve?
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. Sorry, I was late. I had a meeting. I do think it's obviously a good thing that we're going to replace those lead pipes, and I found her information very helpful. I do have some questions though around. I heard earlier that the money just, maybe an assumption that the money may just flow back into to be used later. For me, I feel better if we have a better understanding of if we borrow 1.5 million, for example, and let's say we use 900 because we have a best case scenario, the balance of that money, where does that go? Does that get put into free use across the DPW over there? I think that would be clear. I'd like to understand that. I think that's important. I think another thing that comes to mind now for me is that in all of our meetings we're having now, we're talking about a lot of things that are increasing debt, but not a lot of income creators for the town. So I'd like to see a summary of all the additions to our debt service that are coming in, and then take a look at an impact to taxpayers across the town. I think that would be helpful as we examine this and summarize and give our feedback, given everything that's coming down in our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Can I jump off that point too, to Steve's point?
Absolutely, Alice.
Thanks, Steve. No, I do think that this, I said before, this is really important, but to Steve's point, I do agree 100% because even with Monday's feasibility, I didn't understand where that amount was coming from. And we also aren't going to need that from May 1st, 270 days. So we really need like an understanding of these debts and timeframes, like so that if we're in a situation, because there is this discussion of an override, where we should be prioritizing kind of the debts and the things that are important versus like maybe prolonging something of that sort. It's like the feasibility to go on for the fall or January because of the things of the debts like listed, and like so a timeline would be great too. So like if it's not necessary, like the feasibility was 270 days from May, why take that 1.5 debt right now in February when we can, and we have other debts like the fourth floor on Cunningham. All these things should be listed out for us so that we can really fully understand, kind of the costs and analysis so that we can make educated recommendations based on timelines and debts and prioritizing. I think that would be really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Any follow-ups to that? Jay?
Yeah, just to echo what my two colleagues just said, I've long thought the warrant committee or maybe just me, maybe I'm the one who's in the dark, should be more educated about our town debt and how we service it. I've had some conversations with the treasurer, like, for example, one example is fire stations. We spent money on the fire station that's next door to us. And if I recall correctly, but it may be good to have the town treasurer come in here. We're building it, so we borrow short-term borrowing for 1 year, and then short-term borrowing for the next year. We do short-term borrowing for a couple years, and then we go out to Wall Street to the bond market to get the real 30-year bond for the fire station. And also, as I said, there are some borrowings that have been approved by town meeting that we haven't borrowed yet because we haven't spent the money yet. We haven't done the project yet. So it's tempting for me to say, well, if we approve like the study, my colleague just said, well, why do we approve it now if we're not going to need it for another 6 months? I think if we approve it now, we won't borrow the money till we start spending it. But it would be really good to have the treasurer come in here and talk to either that specific item or sort of in general how our debts work.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, and when we reference our overall debt service, town's responsibilities, are we speaking to this article specifically? Or are we speaking to just generally?
I thought generally.
Just generally? And is this something that you want to hear as to this? Or is this collectively as we move forward?
If it's specific to anything, I mean, Allison just brought up the 1.5 million for the schools, and I was sort of confused about that. Like, when will it be? Will that be part of the debt exclusion if that eventually comes through? So if it's to any specific article, it might be that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think getting line of sight on how that's going to be used would be very helpful. And then understanding, because once that money's released, there's no oversight on it. It goes into that budget for use, right? So I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'd like to see a list of all the budget, all the debt for the town. And then we should be adding as we go, so we can kind of see. We should have like a rolling
Yes.
total, because it seems like there are a lot of things that are going to be popping in there. I mean, this one sounds like it's preferential because it's a interest-free loan for 10 years or something. And you get 25% back.
So we'll have 10 years to do it, but I mean, we still,
It's for 1.275, but still, it's money. It's a lot of money.
correct.
Okay. Well, I will reach out to Mr. Milano and others. We are in a pinch in terms of this meeting, or this special town meeting, but I will do my best to get the people in. Again, town council coming on the 22nd, and we'll see who we can fit in next week, just to address a couple of these issues regarding the debt service. That work?
Yes.
Jay? Sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Any other comments or just questions just about this appropriation in general, overall?
We're just going to go back to her and ask her for the math, right?
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Can articulate that in an email. Yeah. Okay, are we done with our lead pipe discussion? Anything else? Okay. So there was, just moving on to the next item, there was some belief that we maybe be able to discuss the amendment to Chapter 105 of our bylaws. And that's the article concerning not the liquor licenses that have been requested that Mr. Milano presented on, but this is the change to our bylaw regarding the consumption of alcoholic beverages on town property. So we were unable to get town council here just because of a scheduling issue. But I did obviously leave it on the agenda for today. And I think in anticipation of town council coming to us on the 22nd, what I just asked the board here, or the committee here, is to, if you could formulate your questions specifically for Mr. Mello and share them with me via email, and I would send them along to Mr. Mello, our town council. And I just want to say the rationale behind that. In my experience, past couple of years, we've had him and some others in, and you know, we're asking questions, and sometimes they either don't have the information before them, or they haven't had an ample opportunity to kind of review whatever they have to answer the question in a correctly. So I'm thinking that in speaking to town administrator, maybe any questions, especially if they're technical in nature, if you could forward along to me, if you think of them, and I can then in turn get them along to Mr. Mello, just so he can have any materials or numbers or policies or anything that, and he can also do a little maybe research before if he doesn't know the answer off the top of the head. So I just ask all the members of the committee if you could do that. I think we'll just get a little more bang for our buck out of Mr. Mello's time, if you know what I mean. And we're able to, I'd like to really, we had a great discussion the other night about it. I'd like to kind of continue that discussion with him in the room. And then maybe we would be in a position to vote on that maybe next week. Does that work for everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody want to discuss, has anybody given any thought to the consumption of alcohol on town property since our last discussion? Yeah, Brian, I mean, again, this is just open-ended. I didn't know
Yeah,
if...
I don't have a problem with it. It seems like, as long as the selectmen approve it, I assume they'd approve it if it's, you know, done by a caterer or something, that it's, you know, the proper bartender.
Yeah.
That somebody who's trained to be a bartender, I would think it'd be okay. I don't know if that needs to be put in there or something, but I don't really have a problem with it. My feeling.
Yeah, I heard some concerns in the last meeting, and I thought about them, and they concerned me also, but I keep coming back to the proposal is to move from forbidding it to not forbidding it. The proposal is not free-for-all. Like, I may have opened a can of worms by saying, oh, PTO might have a wine and cheese night. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but if such a thing were to happen, first of all, the PTO would have to decide it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Second of all, they would have to get permission either from the administration or the school committee. I don't remember how the regulations are written. They'd also have to get permission from the select board. So, and maybe all those things would happen because maybe that's a perfectly fine thing to do. But it doesn't mean, okay, town meeting approves this and then suddenly, I keep coming back to, we're moving from forbidden to not forbidden. Mm-hmm. And then that's still, there's still guardrails.
I have my same concerns as I had last week about people consuming alcohol at, remind me, Lori, the name of the Island Oasis, the real name.
The deck.
The deck at East Milton Square.
Park.
Thank you. It is Manning Park, and I should know that because I was there for the whole dedication of it. Anyway, in Manning Park, and I am concerned about the impacts on the neighbors that live around there who already face so much difficulty with traffic and all kinds of other things. And I think that, yes, I do, put a lot of faith in our select board, but it's a lot of coordination with a lot of different pieces of town. So it's coordination with our police department to make sure that they're there and able to monitor the situation and ensure public safety. But then again, there could be a crisis happening someplace else. So to make sure that there is the correct protocols in place. As you said, to make sure that there are licensed bartenders or the appropriate people making sure that people aren't being overserved, that children aren't being served, that people aren't drinking and driving. So I don't necessarily have as much of a problem with it in buildings, But when we're outdoors, when we're getting, in crowded areas where there are children present, in places that people live in densely packed areas, I am concerned about the impact in particular. And maybe it's because I live there, I don't know. But the impact in particular on the area surrounding the deck. And those were some of the examples that were cited of when we would do it. And so I don't really see a great benefit to it. I don't drink that much, so maybe that's part of it. But I don't see a great benefit to it, but I see a lot of risk. So I will be interested to see what Attorney Mello says about how the town is limiting that risk. And then I think I would feel, at least have some different thoughts. And also, it's partly because I'm a lawyer and all I can think about is like disaster and risk. But when I do the risk-benefit calculation, I don't know that I see a huge benefit, but I do see some potential liabilities and some problems with it, so.
Well said.
Thank you. Oh, sometimes.
Allison?
Well, I see Liz's points, but what's the difference between that and like people walking around Porch Fest and drinking with kids around? And that's been an event that's been going on for years, and has it been a problem for people with kids and open so, I think when you bring an event together, you have that no matter where it is outside the East Milton Stroll for Halloween. We're not talking about every weekend throwing Rangers in the square. So I think like these are going to be events that are, kind of with adults that are responsible, or it's their town community who have proven in outside events to be these type of people already for numerous events around town. So yes, it might not be legal. I'm probably calling that out, but it's the obvious of what's going on. So I just, want to throw out these great examples of community events that, have proven to be responsible and well managed and so I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison, very much.
I had something to say, not back to Allison, but
Yeah,
that
sure.
reminded me.
Yeah, please.
So, Allison, you reminded me. So this kind of brings up another point. So we had talked about maybe there could be a little bit more information from the select board about what kinds of protocols would be in place that would cause them to agree to it. So like, is there gonna be a bartender? The reason why you reminded me of it, Allison, is because I know a lot of the roads are blocked off with Porch Fest. So, maybe that's not appropriate for the East Milton Stroll and the Halloween and all of that, but that is something that happens. And so, the select board thinking about for these events, especially if they're repeat events that we see every year, what kinds of protocols that they're gonna wanna be in place. Right, because as you said, these are responsible adults. We've been able to do it in the past, and I think all of that is true. And so what would the select board wanna see from people asking permission to be able to have this? I would just be interested to know that as well, because it does seem like they do have some, maybe not the select board itself, but there are procedures in place already, and you reminded me of that with respect to Porch Fest. So what other kinds of procedures can there be in place so that we can kind of make sure?
Unfortunately, those aren't blocked off, Liz. Those aren't blocked off.
Oh, really? Oh,
No,
I don't know.
not unless you're on a dead end, they're not blocked off,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
I just want, I don't know if that matters to your point, but they're not, So and
Okay.
I think the people that serve when they have a band, they block off in front of their house, like
Oh,
areas
okay.
for people to park, but you're walking like Elliott Street, major
Yes.
streets without any details.
Brian?
The last couple events that I've been at Manning Park, they've been selling beer and wine at the library, and then people have been buying it, but they're not selling it on the property, but they are drinking. So it's there.
I'm sorry.
It's happening.
So what library? What part?
East Milton Library, they have a little bar
The
there.
Art Center.
Okay.
And they sell it
The
there
Art
for the
Center.
events.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Really?
All right, Jay.
So I'm hearing
I
Liz's.
just went like this.
Oh, okay.
Well, that came up last time too, but
I'm hearing Liz's concerns, but we currently the select board issues one-day liquor license. You know, I remember hearing some at the Eustis Estate, various churches, the Milton Arts Center, they issue one-day liquor licenses right now. And this would, I think, just be an expansion of that current policy. You know, instead of only doing them for churches or various places, it could also be something that's happening on town property. So whatever concerns we have about these in the future, I think exists now. How do they make sure there's a licensed bartender or whatever? I don't know, you know, if they offer a one-day liquor license to a church, I think the church is hosting, the church is in charge. Eustis Estate, same thing. Milton Arts Center, the same thing. I don't know if the town is ever going to be the host. Like it might be the Chamber of Commerce or somebody hosting it, not the town, if that alleviates. So I sort of don't know what protections we need in the future that we don't have now. And I'll also address your question, Liz, about what's the upside. I'm also not a big drinker, but the upside is, I'll say more people come to events when there's alcohol allowed. You know, somebody might disagree with me, or somebody might say, well, it's different types of people, it's less young families and more, I don't know. But I think it's safe to say that more people attend certain events when there's alcohol. So the upside is community building.
A Halloween stroll. So the other thing for children, the other thing I wanted to say is I would be interested to see if there could be something in place where the select board would my understanding of the one-day liquor license, and I could be wrong, is that those are not decided like in a select board public meeting necessarily. Like if I want to have a wedding on my whatever it is, the Eustis Estate, I don't have to go before and have public comment and all of that. I'm worried again about people having an impact in their part of town, in their neighborhood that don't want this. And in particular, in Manning Park, which I correctly remembered the name of. And so if a different group, because all of Milton is Milton, if people want to come in and say, okay, we want to have this event at Manning Park, that's great. And I do think that there could be some liability and risks for the town, even if they're not the ones hosting it. So I want to talk to Attorney Mello next week. But are we considering the people that live around there, who are the people whose, you know, children and whatever could be impacted? I'm not saying I'm against it. I just want to get some more information about sort of, one, what is the potential risk? And then, I don't know, you tell me how we could do this if anybody else wants it. But what are the parameters that we're considering? Because right now, it doesn't seem like the select board necessarily has any specific framework laid out for what they would take into consideration for when to grant it and when not to grant it. And so if there are parameters, I would be interested in seeing them, such as a bartender, which I just think is wise for liability reasons. And then I would feel a lot more comfortable that, you know, we could say to people, this makes sense because there are protections in place. So I don't really have an issue with it as a whole, but I'm curious about when are we going to decide that this is an appropriate thing to do? And are we going to consider the thoughts of the people that live near that public property?
I think that if there were a lot of problems that were happening and it got out of control, I think neighbors would say something to the select board and they probably would start denying licenses. I think that would happen. But from somebody who also lives really close to there, I think it's probably nice for people to walk up there. If they want to get a beer, they can have a beer. You know, it's not like the events I was at, nobody was swilling, you know? It was very, like, tame. But You know, I think it's just like, I would be surprised if many neighbors complain, but if it got out of control, you're right, they would. And I think at that point, it would probably stop. Which is good that the selectmen can say, cut it off, you know?
Judy?
Actually, what I was going to point out, Liz already brought up about speaking to Attorney Mello. If he could outline various scenarios of liability that might ease everyone's mind as we enter into voting for this. So, we'll be counting on you, Liz, when Mr. Mello's here.
Thank you. I'm already drafting my email to Tom, Judy.
Okay. Anybody else have any just comments about Chapter 105? Amendments? Yes, Liz?
Now, this might have already been mentioned, but would this be alcohol for sale, and would it be for sale by the sponsor? Or would they be giving it out? Jay's going to answer my question.
I'm just looking at the drinking, sale, or possession is prohibited unless authorized by the select board. I'm summarizing that.
So they could authorize sale, theoretically?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the purview of the host, right? Like, do we
Well,
want
to Steve's point earlier, I was thinking if Milton itself could sell alcohol on Milton property, I'm thinking about money
Revenue
going back to the
generation.
town, because we've been talking about giving away money, but
Milton Town Tavern?
no, thank you.
Well, that's a moneymaker.
Well, it certainly is.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. You can just come over to my house, Lori.
In the, never mind.
Uber.
Well, I think that's,
Yeah.
that's the idea of the other article, right? I mean, I think, let's be honest, if you look at the city of Boston, what's the moneymaker for a restaurant? Not beer or wine, full alcohol, right? That's what people, and I to Jay's point, and to Allison too, it's, it does, it brings people together, Brian, and I had been up there and around too. I didn't see anybody getting out of control. There weren't keg stands going on. It wasn't like this big thing, but I mean, I think these are all excellent questions, and I think this is what comes up on the floor of town meeting. I find, Jay, maybe you could speak to this. You don't have to, but when the liquor licenses came up historically in the town, it created a lot of buzz. And I'm going back to Abbey Park, when that you had one liquor license in town forever, and it was the Milton Hill House, right? And I just remember that first foray into restaurants, it caused a lot of stir.
I was surprised the list of how many we currently have. Was it
Yeah.
like 7 or 8 or 9 or something? I didn't know it was that many.
I know it is. So it is really interesting, and I think these are some questions. I think these are all questions that town meeting would ask.
You're making puns without realizing. It created a stir.
Okay.
It created a buzz. Okay. Thank you.
So
It was shaken up.
Everybody was shaken up.
That's a good one, Jim. People were shook up at town meeting. I remember.
Because
Many,
a
many,
twist.
a long time ago. And
People
but-
were on the rocks, neighbors on the rocks.
Stop. I'm not, so again, I just want to reiterate, great questions. I just want to get the most out of Mr. Mello's time when he's here, and I really want to address everything. If there's a big laundry list, we can do that. In terms of some of the other questions, just about the debt servicing, I will speak to Mr. Milano about that and see what we can get together for this special town meeting. And I think also, to the general point, Steve, Jay, everyone, Allison, it would help us to have this and to cite it to town meeting. Like, this is what's coming down the pike. This is what we've already encumbered. This is what we want to. This is the vision. And this is how much it's going to cost. So, all things that I will work on. But again, just if you can get those questions to me and Stephen, it would be great.
I
Ron?
just have one comment.
Yeah, sure.
So I think Attorney Mello can help us answer some legal questions, but if the questions are, what are the guardrails that the select board foresees? I don't think he can answer those, right? I think that's something that the select board would have to think about. I don't, to Jay's point, this is just to remove the prohibition. They may not have thought about what are other guardrails. They may not even think they will define any guardrails. They may just think that they get to decide on a case-by-case basis if there are issues. But if we have questions that are not legal in nature, I would think those don't go to Attorney Mello. Those would go to Nick or the select board.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, lawyers answer lawyer questions.
And that's it.
Yes.
And that's it. Yeah, that's.
And always with an it depends.
Yeah. And I can see Attorney Mello saying exactly that. Like, I don't know what the select board's doing. I can just speak to Milton will get sued, or they won't get sued, or nothing will happen at all. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking maybe, I'll speak to Mr. Milano. Maybe the select board, Ron, maybe a member of the select board might be the most appropriate person to speak to this. I think that in kind of my spitballing it was kind of one of those, come in, see what you got, and we'll make a decision. But it would be helpful to know, in the town to know, what the parameters the select board thinks about when offering a license. So lots of emails to be sent. Are there any other comments or asks or questions about Chapter 105? Next week, I'll probably target this for Wednesday. Mr. Mello and another speaker. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so. Okay.
I'll just ask
Sure.
about scheduling. Are we going to?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about right now.
Okay. Are we going to have votes potentially at every meeting next?
It was my intention to, on each agenda, on each night, I'm looking for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Each night I was placing this draft warrant in its entirety with warrant committee discussion and potential voting on
Okay.
all.
Everything every night. Okay.
Everything every night, Jay. I want to give us the freedom, the time, time elements. Wednesday will be a little different. Probably have a couple of people in here speaking, so that we might not get as much done, just because there might be a lot of questions and back and forth. But my goal is to try to get everything that's before us right now completed by next week. So it's another ask of you, members of the committee, just take the opportunity when you have some free time just to bear down on these and speak amongst people and call me, speak amongst other members of the committee if you have questions or you need materials or information. But I just want you to be ready that I'll be looking to put these to the vote, just so we can coordinate comments, get them to the town in a timely fashion, and then another article from the select board regarding some lighting that we started a couple of years ago, briefly, and then obviously the ADU and what the planning board is looking to potentially present to us. That would be done in the month of February. And I mentioned it briefly in the last meeting. The comment would most likely not get in by print. So that's all I have about future scheduling. Anybody have any questions about next week? Judy.
No, you answered my question about the articles from the planning board coming in, on a tight time schedule. But you did answer that we can fit that in before the print for a vote, but the comment itself will be on some kind of a green sheet at town meeting.
Yeah, and Judy, if I
Or
knew,
a yellow sheet, whatever sheet would be.
if I knew where that was at, I would tell you, but I don't. They're meeting in about another week.
Next week.
Yeah, so if you want to tune into the planning board, I'm sure it'll be an interesting meeting, and you probably get a lot of information just concerning what they're doing and expectations.
Yeah.
But this is not typical. You know, it's typical in the sense where sometimes we get things at the last minute and we get to scramble. Obviously, getting things far after it goes to print is unusual. So I just want the newer members of the committee. In my experience, it hasn't happened at all or very frequently. So.
And then do you have thoughts about the following week? I know it has to go up. Did you find out when the warrant is actually
end of
going
the
to print?
month. So it gives us over a week for those who are drafting comments to draft them and get them back.
Okay. So it's not going out on the 28th. It's just that week.
Yeah, there's some like wiggle room.
He's got a wig, yeah.
Sometimes it
Wiggle room.
changes, but I think it's good for us to set a tight deadline.
Okay.
You know, in terms of comments, I'm gonna talk to you about that next week and what my expectations for the comments. But I would say, especially new members, take 5 or 10 minutes, go to the town website, look at some of the old warrants, look at the comments, and just see how they're drafted. You know, you can see somewhat different styles,
Seen some, yeah.
but you know, I'm not going to get into a lot of it now. But just take a look at some of the old comments and you know, the past few years, and just give you an idea of the structure of them, and you know how we you know how they're traditionally drafted. So that's really the only big thing. I would like to get some of the newer members involved in that process. We've had a lot of turnover on the Warrant Committee, so we've lost a lot of experience drafting. I just want to make sure everyone gets up to speed and is aware of the process. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions, concerns, future scheduling, next week, things to come?
I'm going to try to zoom in.
Okay,
That'd be
Brian, thank you very
something.
much.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, send those questions, legal questions to me concerning Chapter 105. But I don't have anything further for the committee at this time. Is there a motion?
Yeah. I move.
Liz moves to adjourn,
I do. Thank you.
Second.
and it's seconded by Lori. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.